The New York Giants offseason officially has began, where you got some coach firings. We got a press conference that happened earlier this morning. We got some quotes from a couple different players. A lot to unpack in such little time. And once again, this is one of the most pivotal off seasons for the New York Giants. So let's start off with the first news this morning, man. The Giants did go ahead and fire two of their coaches, the offensive line coach and Bobby Johnson, and special teams coordinator Thomas McKinney. Now, I'll touch on McKinney and then I'll touch on Bobby Johnson after that. McKinney has been here for around 6 years now. Never really had a top special teams unit, but these past 2 years, man, we've sucked. I'm going to be honest, we've sucked. We haven't had a great special teams all around. When you see other teams having players that create impact game in and game out, but then also you see punt return touchdowns, kick return touchdowns. Now, the NFL is a hard league and the hardest league when it comes to football. So do I expect a kick return every other week? No. The game where Oshesky did take it back for a touchdown, I always wondered to myself, I'm like, we never have a punt return touchdown for anything. Like, we don't have that at all. It makes me think about that because when we play other teams, they do that to us. You've seen punt return touchdown scored on us. You've seen kickoff return touchdown scored on us. You've seen bad lanes on a kickoff where a guy takes it and gets a good return yardage on that. You got to look at your coordinator and think that's why it's going on. You got to look at somebody. You can't 100% blame the players 24/7. The person that's accountable for that unit has to be held accountable. And I'm glad to see him go. Definitely a guy that I wasn't moved by to continue to keep. So I'm glad they fired him. I'm wondering who they're going to bring in. Maybe it's Joe Judge. No, I'm joking. Who knows what's going to be in special teams, man. But the big news, Bobby Johnson is fired finally. A couple weeks too late. You could argue 3 months too late. This offensive line has been atrocious ever since he's been here. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. This offensive line has been bad for a very long time now. Now think about it. Gettleman came in to fix the offensive line. That never happened. Joe Shane's here 2 years in. That never happened. But Bobby Johnson has been their coach. And this team led up the second most sacks in NFL history. Now, think about that. The second most sacks all time in NFL history. That's a ridiculous amount. By far the worst in the league. By far the worst that a quarterback can succeed with. How do you expect a quarterback to succeed with that? Now, do I think that we shouldn't move on from our quarterback because our offensive line is so bad? No. I know there's some people that want to stick with Daniel Jones because of the offensive line. Listen, we're primed with the top pick. Let's try to get a good QB and a good QB draft. That's going to be a whole nother topic. But Bobby Johnson did not improve this line at all. You seen Evan Neal. He got drafted 7th overall, had a struggling rookie season. And then you say, hey, man, like in the offseason, we're going to get right. We're going to get everything back under normal when it comes to his technique and, trying to really transform him into a good NFL young player. And he was probably worse. He was probably worse or just as bad as his rookie season. I don't think he improved that much. And when you're on the field, you didn't see any improvements when it came to Evan Neal. So Evan Neal not improving is a big, big, big red flag when it comes to a guy like Bobby Johnson. So I'm not surprised to see him go. There was no way we could have kept Bobby Johnson with having this bad of an offensive line. Now, Daniel Jones, salute to you. Tyrod Taylor, salute to you. Tommy DeVito, salute to you. Because there was games where each of them got sacked 6, 7, 8, 9 times. And I know sometimes the quarterback don't help themselves when it comes to these, statistics. Sometimes they hold the ball for too long. But the offensive line has been an issue for a long time, and we know it was the offensive line. The moment Andrew Thomas went out, everything went to crap pretty much. You're plugging in guys that you draft at guard and Josh Azudu, to left tackle. You're bringing in other guys like Marcus McKeithen, who we drafted late, hoping that he could hold some ground at guard when nobody was able to hold down the guard position all year. We had to bring up Justin Pugh off of the couch, and shout out to him. He was serviceable, but then again, he's not stopping me from drafting an offensive guard. John Michael Schmitz, he was decent, but nothing that I'm like, hey, he's going to be an all-pro pretty soon. He's not a Pro Bowler. We need guys to continue to transcend. And I know a lot of you guys in the comments, and I know a lot of us Giants fans, credit to you guys. I'm not going to, discredit your opinion. Not every team in this league uses a top draft pick on a lineman to have a top offensive line. That's going to sound dumb to some people. But what I'm saying is that you see guys that are getting drafted in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round that develop into good players. You see guys that are brought in that might not work somewhere else, like guys like from our team, Jonathan Feliciano going to the 49ers and working for them. You see guys transcend on other teams under the right coaching staff. So I think if we get the right coaching staff, we have talent at the offensive line. Don't get me wrong, we still need to draft at least 2 guards in the next upcoming draft. I'm not going to kill Joe Schoen if he doesn't draft an offensive lineman in the first round. I can't do it. I'm not going to, because there's other holes on this team, like a quarterback, like a receiver. And the trenches is where everything gets settled at the end of the day. But I do think you can get a guy later in the round and just develop that player into a good lineman. If we get the right coach, I think we'll be in a good spot. And I think, once again, it's not like we haven't invested in this offensive line. You got Josh Azudu, who was drafted in the 3rd round. You got Evan Neal 2 years ago, drafted the 7th overall pick. Like, how many times are we going to continue to invest in this line and it just not come to fruition? Half of it's on the player, half of it's on the coaching. Get the coaching right, and let's see what happens with the player. That's my take on it. I'm recording this part after I finish the video while I'm editing it, because I can't believe I didn't touch on this, but I'll touch on it real quick. Joe Schoen did address talking about Daniel Jones will be back by week 1. Don't believe any of that. And when I say that, I mean that wholeheartedly. I wouldn't put any stock into any of it. Right now, Daniel Jones is under contract. Right now, Joe Schoen is the one that gave him that contract. Of course he's going to say he's going to be back by week 1, because why wouldn't he? There's no other quarterback on the roster. He has to address the quarterback position. He talked about that, but he said in terms of being a backup, because we don't have somebody behind Daniel Jones. He could still go out in the draft and still add a quarterback ahead of time. He's not going to show his cards. He's not going to show that he's quarterback hungry before the NFL draft. So I wouldn't put too much stock into it. Do I expect Daniel Jones to be here next year? Of course. He's under contract. Will he be starting all year? That I don't know. I can still see the Giants going into the draft. They might have to trade up for a quarterback. That's a whole nother video to talk about how they can even get a quarterback. But I wouldn't put off the Giants drafting one. Just because Joe Schoen is saying it to the media, just because he's saying it to everybody, he's not going to tip his hand. He's not going to tell everybody what he's planning to do, because why would he? He'll be losing any leverage he has in terms of trying to make a trade go on. He'll be losing a lot of things. So I wouldn't focus on those points. Keep watching. Now, moving past that as well, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll were on the press conference this morning. They were addressing things. That's where they announced about the firings of, Johnson and McGahee. They did say Wink Martindale and Kafka are expected to be back. Now, how much weight does this hold? It might be a thing that they're just putting out there that, hey, we expect them back, but maybe it might not work out. However they gauge it, however they want it, obviously they're going to manipulate however they want it to be. Now, I made a couple videos and I said, I don't think Wink works when we play against tough teams, when we play against good quarterbacks. He can confuse a young quarterback, but when he plays a really good quarterback, I feel like he struggles. I'm not going to walk it back 100%, but I do think that he limits those teams. He limits those players to a game where it could be won. There was a stat posted out. The Giants held their opponents to less than 20 points 6 times in the season. The Eagles, on the other hand, who are 11-6 now going into the playoffs, they held a team less than 20 points 4 times. Yet they're going into the playoffs, and here we are at 6 wins on the season. That says enough. This offense is not good. And when you have a defense that's able to limit them to under 20 points, you at least hope that your offense can score more than 20. But we had our offense scoring 10 points, 6 points, getting shut out. That's what this offense was producing, the worst offense in the league. So I think Wink Martindale deserves to stay back. And obviously, you like to see players develop in his system as well. Deontay Banks was drafted to fit his scheme. Kayvon Thibodeau was drafted to fit his scheme. Dexter Lawrence has improved dramatically in his scheme. You don't want to really go away from that. Bobby Okereke, another signing that was great in this defense, man. Wink Martindale deserves to come back. So I hope he stays back. I hope he doesn't get let go. We're going to see what happens with that. Mike Kafka. Now, there was some play calling that, has you scratching your head sometimes. But ultimately, I do think if you get the right quarterback in this room, they'll play well. Tyrod Taylor almost threw for 300 yards yesterday, almost threw for 300 yards another game, or he did against the Rams. Those type of outputs from backup quarterbacks, winning 3 games with Tommy DeVito, you have to give Mike Kafka some credit. Now, we did only win 6 games under Daniel Jones. We did look bad, but it's all in unison, man. The offensive line was bad. The quarterback play turned out to be bad. Once Andrew Thomas came back in the lineup, the offense was a lot more, at least you were able to watch the offense move the ball and let alone score more points. So I do think, Andrew Thomas is the MVP hands down on this offense. If he's there, this offense is going to move with him. And if you get the right quarterback back there as well, it could be even more dynamic. I'm not arguing that we should keep our guys and go back at it if Andrew Thomas is on the field. I'm just saying add another dynamic player in the backfield, that quarterback. Who knows what could happen? Jaden Daniels. That's just me. But moving past that as well, Saquon Barkley did have a couple of statements, and Joe Shane talked about Saquon Barkley. He said, hey, if we got to use the tag, that is a tool that we have, and we can place it on Saquon Barkley and, move on another season and see what Saquon Barkley's going to do. Just to remind everyone, last year he did get tagged. Then they worked out a 1-year deal. And Joe Shane made it clear that there was no precedent set by Saquon saying, hey, I'll sign this 1-year deal if you don't tag me next year. None of that was said. Saquon Barkley is probably expecting the tag. And he said it in a quote. He said, if they're going to tag me now. If you're not going to tag me, let me go. So a really crazy offseason coming soon for the Giants, man. I don't know if I can see Saquon Barkley somewhere else, but, the writing was on the wall last season. Do I think a long-term contract is going to get done? Not too sure. The longest I could see is maybe 2 years, if anything. If not, you can see him either getting tagged or him being let go. So we're going to see what happens with Saquon Barkley. Same thing with Xavier McKinney. They cannot franchise tag Xavier McKinney. The cap hit for a safety is like $17 million. I don't see them getting a franchise tag for Xavier McKinney. I definitely see sign him long-term, 3 or 4 year deal. He played all the defensive snaps this past season. A true Iron Man after what happened last season. And I'm down to bring Xavier McKinney back. In some games, I felt like you couldn't feel his impact, but I feel like last year, seeing him play all the snaps and seeing him play towards the latter half of the season, you really seen what Xavier McKinney was able to do, and we need him on the back end, man. Sign Xavier McKinney, get that deal done. You cannot franchise tag him. I don't expect that to happen at all. Joe Shane also did touch on Darren Waller. He said Darren Waller, he would do that trade over and over again, even though he was hurt. So Darren Waller might be back next year. I didn't expect it. I thought they would cut bait, definitely change that salary up. Who knows? Maybe they'll try to free up some salary with him. But Darren Waller, he might be back next year. I wasn't really moved by him this year. If he was let go, I wouldn't blink twice. I want to know your guys' input down below, man. Let me know down in the comments, man. Do you think Saquon Barkley's going to be back? Do you think Xavier McKinney's going to go back? How do you feel about the coach firings, man? Let me know down below, man. Subscribe. Also, Road to 10K still active, man. I got more content coming for y'all. The offseason is where we really start to dive in and really see how the Giants can get back to stardom, man. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.